We're here with the administrative stream, and it's going to be Jason Costa presenting the data management for First Nation housing. Jason's online, and so he's going to be presenting this virtually. So we'll get Jason up on the screen here, and he can go ahead with his presentation. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? I hope you can. My name is Jason Acosta. I am the operations manager here at CRW Systems. And I'd like to thank First Nations Housing Conference for allowing me to speak this afternoon on basically data management and data management systems. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to be sharing my screen here. So like I said, I will be speaking this afternoon on the data management for First Nation housing. This is basically going to be a run through on the advantages of having a data management for your housing at your First Nation. For this afternoon, I'm just going to be dealing with a few topics that I'd like to go through. One of them is, of course, why do you need a data management system in the first place? What type of information you should be looking for within your housing data database, and how this data management system can help at all levels of the housing program, right from administration to housing managers, right up to chief and council. I'll talk a little bit on the inspections and housing inspections, and of course what to look for in terms of information and how we can be using it. And we're going to talk a little bit too about housing funding and how we can come up with a few ideas on how to get further housing funding for your First Nation as well. So to start off with the system here, why do you need a data housing management system for First Nations? So one of the basics, of course, and one of the big things that you will always come into and find out right away is, of course, instant access to housing information. So without a data management system, depending on, of course, how organized the First Nations housing is, if I were to ask any information on any sort of housing, getting information on any particular home or unit within your First Nation varies in terms of time of how you can be getting that information. Sometimes with filing systems and work orders information, getting information on one particular house could take up to an hour to a couple of hours, depending on how much information or where that information is. Connecting and having all of your data in one place in terms of or having all of your housing data onto one database gives you access to any sort of units that you need to at the click of a button, right? Now, of course, this valuable information can also be used for certain things like health and safety. We have having data and having things like, example we're going to be showing here is something like involving GPS coordinates, and having that information available to you in instant access or readily available access can give you help in sort of involving ambulance services or health services where if your First Nation is having problems, or not so much problems, but having a situation where house numbers are not something that's readily available, having the GPS coordinates to that particular house could mean the difference between being able to save one of your clients or having an ambulance service show up at the wrong place. We have a place here for financial tracking, right, on your work orders and all of your renovations. So being able to keep track of the money spent for your work orders or any renovations involving your units, instead of having a paper trail and a physical paper trail and having to track all of that by hand, having them available again with easy access on your database management software could also save you a lot of time. What I have here, I like to, by the way, speaking of which, I'd like to personally thank Atakakuk First Nation and in Saskatchewan and Pickle Lake in Ontario here for providing me with or giving me access to their data here and allowing me to use their data as a bit of a showcase for their housing systems here. So what we have here are just some pictures of mapping that you could be using for your housing database using information like Google Maps and being able to take your houses and your units and being able to put them onto the maps, as long as, you know, as well as being able to zoom in and getting details, gives you great access and sort of also gives you a nice bird's eye view of your First Nation and gives you a nice, with mapping, gives you the ability to also take that information and print it out or display it in a way that other members of the staff can use to attain the information as well. Now, even with these examples here going in, you can see that you can use it for housing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be used for housing. You can use it to mark certain areas within the First Nation as well. You can use it to mark schools, garages, community centers, hospitals, certain buildings used for, let's say, like community buildings, the band office. So despite the fact that it is just it is a housing system, it can be used and it can be utilized for other buildings as well within the community. This is another example as well, right? You can be using Bing Maps or Google Maps to take a look at a bird's eye view of the community. You can be using other parts of the community as well and spread out, zoom in. Again, examples of houses and certain informations that can be set on the houses. And of course, all of these houses can also be using GPS and the information that you want to have here as well, you know, in terms of being able to keep up to date with where your houses and where they are. An example here for sort of health and even safety reasons here, we have you can use the mapping systems to look up elevations and topography, where you can use that information to, of course, choose where you want to be building your next house. If it's near to water lines that are prone to flooding, you can be using this type of information that's readily available to make sure that whatever new houses are being built on the First Nation aren't built on areas that are either prone to flooding or are built on areas that don't have solid ground or solid foundations. The example that I talked about earlier was having the ability to put in GPS coordinates into your housing database and having those GPS coordinates correspond to things involving safety, like a ambulance service. One of the examples like I like to use here is the story of having an ambulance service come in and come in for an emergency, and when they had asked where the particular house was, all the information they could get was it was so-and-so's house. They got nothing else on the numbering or where the house would be, because they were just given directions that it was, you know, that many houses past, you know, Jim's house or so-and-so's house. So by the time they got there, they could have gotten there a lot easier had they been given any sort of GPS coordinates on that house. So with a database system and having that information in there, you can take that particular GPS coordinates, come up with reporting, and then keep this type of reporting within your health center. So if there is a place that is going into or has an emergency, they can simply give the house address or give who lives there and give the emergency personnel the GPS coordinates so that they can get more accurate pinpoints to where that house is going to be. Right? Work order, even financial type information. So of course, this is the type of information you want to be able to get a hold of right away. If you have a particular work order, getting the work order, having that information on there, this saves time and money, and instead of having to follow sort of receipts or invoices or any information involving a work order, having that information on hand and out of database gives you all that information at a click's notice. So having information involving your work orders coming in and having that information and sort of fielding into reporting is something you're going to definitely want for your housing database. And this is, of course, something that you also want to keep track of course, as this type of information can be shared with your finance department, and then have your finance department match or even work with in terms of keeping track and making sure that all of the money or any sort of funds are being accounted for. So going on here, what type of information should you be looking for in terms of your housing database? So we've already stepped into this, but sort of even dive further into it. The obvious, of course, is your unit specifications, right? You want to be able to know all the information on any sort of particular unit that you may have at the First Nation. Simple things like, what type of foundation it has, what type of windows does your housing have, specifications, measurements. We also want to be able to track something involving asset management. What type of utilities or furniture, or not so much furniture, but what type of assets do you have in that particular household? Washers, dryers, hot water tanks. You want to be able to not only document what type of assets are in the household, but information on those particular assets, when it was installed, the last time it was maintained, its brand, its current condition. One big one, of course, is fire safety specifications. You want to be able to know at a notices or at a notice which houses that you have to be able to look at or pay attention to. So you're going to want a way to go into your database and sort of ask, what houses are rating low on the fire safety spectrum? What houses do I have to keep an eye on? What houses do I need to keep an eye on so that they are low risk for burnouts? Of course, the work orders are something you want to keep an eye on. These are the day-to-day work orders that come into housing and do calls for housing every day. That calls that they always get about maintenance and issues with a particular household. You want to be able to keep track of that. What point is the work order at? Have we started it? Is it currently being worked on? Is it completed? You also want to be able to visualize a lot of this information. A lot of individuals sort of, are looking at or just looking at numbers or looking at particular specs. I think there's a whole visual aspect towards the housing that needs to be addressed as well. So not only do you want to know everything about the house, but it's also really nice to have a database that has pictures and sort of up-to-date pictures within the housing as well. Part of the reasons we even have a map is used within housing databases is that so you have a visual representation of your First Nation instead of just having, let's say, GPS coordinates or just addresses within your system there. So here's an example of some information that you want to be keeping track of in terms of your housing units, including, like I had mentioned before, pictures. You want to be able to conduct and put in information like project codes, your typical information that you would always put, things like street addresses. But in terms of other details that you may want to, you may want to be keeping track of accounts for that household, whether it comes to electricity or gas or water. Right? This particular screen here has the GPS coordinates as well. As I spoke earlier here, we'd also want to be looking at asset management. So asset management in this case, we have a fridge, stove, washer, dryer. You want to know the conditions of each of these houses these assets, and how much they cost, their model year, right? Their current condition. One of the stories I'm quite often told is, the story of a household getting, like you say, a brand new washer and dryer, and having that washer and dryer be at that household for, let's say, a few months, and then all of a sudden disappear. And when they try to find out, they find out the washer's dryer is, 3 or 4 houses down, because the client has sold the washer and dryer, and for a little extra cash, and then needs a new washer and dryer for that household. Being able to put down and sort of follow the assets for each household can help get that information in for that unit, and sort of follow where those assets are, and whether or not those assets stay within the unit household. Things involving the fire safety, as I mentioned before, things involving your fire extinguisher, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, right? All this information can be kept within the housing unit here. And of course, as I always say, there really isn't no such thing as too little information. Being able to take and assess certain aspects of your household, like your fire safety, you can give it a rating like of 1 to 10. 10 being the best, 1 being very much a fire hazard. This type of information is quite useful when creating a housing database, right? And of course, work orders. Work orders should be followed, and whatever work orders are put to a particular household should be history, and of course followed for what state they're particularly in. If you get a work order in, is it waiting for approval? Is it currently being worked on? Has it been completed? If it has been completed, who completed it? Are there before and after pictures? Right? This is the type of information that you are looking for, of course, within your database, so that you're able to better utilize your housing. So with all the information that's available then through the housing program, or that you should be looking for, you should be asking yourself, how does this help in terms of the levels of the housing program? So the 3 levels that I've talked about here, of course, are the administrative, the managerial, and the highest level, of course, the council, or counselors, or chief and council. So for the administrative level, housing database program, or housing management database management, keeps track of the day-to-day housing updates and changes. So for the administrative, being at the ground level there, you're sort of the one taking calls, keeping the track of the day-to-day changes. If somebody got a new work order, you're the one that's putting in into the database. Of course, with that, you always have the up-to-date unit information as well, because you are the ones putting in that data. And of course, you have your updates to the work orders and current statuses of those particular work orders. So since you are the one going into and inputting that information, you know where work orders are and where their current statuses are within the program. Now, when it comes to management, having a access to a database, of course, gives you up-to-date reports on any unit that you need to look up. And of course, if you want to keep track of where your work orders are, let's say you want to look up information on which work orders are currently waiting for approval. Having that data on there and having that ready to go makes your job a little easier, right? Instant access, of course, to housing information. So if you need to know any information on a particular house, a few clicks coming in instead of having to ask for or having to look through any sort of filing, get you that housing information. And with all of that, of course, it helps free up your time to actually manage your housing and being able to go out there and make sure that whatever needs to be done for housing can be done is done up to date. Now, even for chief and council, even though they may not be using the housing program themselves, it does give them instant access to housing information. So if they need to know about any particular house, of course, gaining access, even at a read-only level, to a housing program does give you the knowledge that you need for any sort of housing. And with that sort of housing, it also gives you access to any sort of housing reporting that you would need. So if you need to find out certain reporting based on the information on your housing, you're able to do so. So what I have here is just a little links. You have the chief and council, you have management, you have administration, and together, of course, create the housing team. Now, something that I do want to sort of go into and have everybody over there understand, of course, is I have this set up this way where you have the administration, not so much at the bottom, but what I like to say, basically the foundation to the housing program, because one of the aspects within housing database is, of course, the ability to get that information within your housing database. So, I've been at this for about 6 years now, and selling sort of housing database programs and everything. I've spoke to a lot of housing managers and shown them, what can be done and what sort of information is available. And they come in and they like the any sort of program that we have or program that I may be selling. But I always try to remind them that the management part of the housing, which is what their job is, isn't going to be easy or helpful if the information is not available to them at the ground level. So a lot of the information, if not all the information, needs to be done at the administration level. Quite often what I like to use is that the database is only as good as the amount of work that's been put into it. And that work needs to be done at the administration level. So if you have a housing clerk or you have housing administration to be there to take the calls, to sit at a computer and get that database put in and get that information put into the system, then management is able to do their job. Then chief and council are able to get their reports, and the housing database or housing management program can get on its way. If you don't have the base level of the administration, quite often that job is left over to management. And in a lot of cases, I do get a lot of housing managers who tell me that they can get that information in, and I tell them that that's great. That's great that you can say that and get in and get that information. But as a housing manager, I find a lot that sitting at let's say, computer, putting in that data and making sure that database or that foundation is built properly, takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of very fine-tuned work. And as a housing manager, a lot of management doesn't involve being able to sit at a computer and having that information put in. So having your data management or having a data management program is all great and fun, and it will make your life easier. But first things first, the data has to be put in, the data has to be managed, and the data has to be kept up to date. And that's done at the administration level. So having this data is a very powerful tool, but the data first has to be put in. We're not at a point right now, maybe sometime in the future, where we can come in and basically scan a First Nation and have all that information there. We're just not quite there yet. So the administration level needs to be there to build the foundation of your database. All right, so a little bit then on inspections and what type of things you should be looking for with inspections. So of course, with your data management and your data management system there, one of the big things is once you get your data in, you're going to want to take a look at those houses, be able to do inspections on them. And when you've done those inspections, you're going to be able to get to the house, take pictures, assess costs, and with all of your inspections, and then take those inspections, of course, and if there are any sort of issues with all those inspections, you want to be able to create work orders based on those so that you can start and begin to make improvements on houses based on what you've inspected. Now, of course, with that, you want to be able to date statuses on the work orders and get up-to-date statuses on the work orders, which is what your data management system can be used for. So as an example here, you can be over in and you can start taking, of course, inspections going into your homes, taking a look at certain, of course, aspects and sort of inspections within the household. You want to be looking at things like foundation, of course, exterior type information, even things involving your bedrooms and your windows, and whatever you need to be done, you're going to be doing in your inspections. You, of course, want to be able to take your inspections, fill them out into your inspection forms here, and then be able to track those inspections on there as well. Now, let me just go back there. Now, with your inspections, of course, you're going to want to be able to take that information, work with it, and be able to assess costs for whether or not you want them. Of course, whether something is urgent, whether it can be done a little bit later. But the fact is that once you have all the information within your housing program, you're able to go in and make further changes so that that information can be kept up to date. So one of the issues, of course, as well within our housing program is how do you, I talk about getting housing administration, getting housing clerks, being able to take those housing clerks to start building your housing. But one of the biggest issues that comes up, of course, within housing is how do I get funding within the housing to pay or pay for all of those clerks or any staff other than, let's say, a housing manager. You have your housing counselor, you have your housing manager. You want to be able to start building your database. So how do you go about getting any funding for that? So in most cases, the housing funding is achieved through, of course, either income assistance or by the budget set by the First Nations themselves. Taking that funding usually doesn't leave you very much leeway in terms of getting any additional funding to help pay for any sort of administration. So Rent, of course, can be charged within your housing profile here to get any further funding. Now, one of the things though that been associated, at least I know when I've been finding in now, like I say, with Thunder Bay in Ontario, it may be the same, but a lot of the things, especially where we're from here in Manitoba, the use of the word rent is stuck with a sort of like a negative stigma where uh, as you talk to your clients about getting in rent and using it within your housing, not a lot of clients or anybody within the First Nation likes to pay rent because it with rent it tends to signify that you're paying somebody or you're rather lining somebody's pockets with money in order to live at that particular house. So with the connotation of rent, I've sort of advised a lot of our housing managers here to, instead of using the word rent, use something like the word maintenance fees or housing insurance so that any funding that you may be putting in through your housing policy um, can be put under those pretenses, and that would actually not be lying at all. Like the money that you're getting in there is paying for the fact that let's say if you do have a busted door or if you have any sort of work orders that need to be done, that any money that was going into housing is going into exactly what it is. It is a maintenance fee, right? Or it is housing insurance. And it's just to make sure that there is funding in there to make sure that you know what you do have funding in there to help pay for or help pay for the fixing of those particular work orders. I mean, one of the examples that I do, or one of the examples that I use as well is I was working with a First Nation and they were coming in and using rent for their housing policy and having it set up. And at first they were met with a lot of animosity towards having to pay this, where people were asking them, why do I have to pay rent? This house isn't even mine. I don't have to I can live here for free. And a lot of the information and with a lot of the housing as well, they were just finding there was no money for anything to be fixed. So changing it over to maintenance fees and having at the chief and council level come in and having them back up, saying that and explaining to a lot of the clients within the First Nation as well that this money was not paying anybody outright. It was to make sure that there was money there for the housing so that if something went wrong or something was wrong with the household, there was funding in order to get it fixed, help towards setting that up for them. So with your database and your database maintenance here, one thing I do like to do is I do want, like I said, the purpose of this thing was to, or presentation was to let you know the sort of things that you are looking for within your housing database or your housing program there. I do want to state that all of the screens and everything that you have seen are available, of course, on the CRW housing program. Before I take any questions, I just want to be able to plug in our system here. If you want any sort of information within our system, you can visit our website at www.cswsystems.nb.ca for a lot of stuff. Here's a picture of the staff that we have on here. I leave the floor to you. Is there any sort of questions that anybody has? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hear anybody on the mic here, but is there anything that any sort of questions that anybody have on the systems, or rather housing maintenance?
Looks like everybody's satisfied with the presentation and
All right. Well, like I said as well, if you need any sort of information, we are available. Of course, you can contact me as well if you need any information on the website. please feel free to take a look at it. And if you need any contact information, all the contact information is there as well. If there aren't any other questions there, I'd like to thank everybody for giving me the time to talk about database maintenance and housing databases. And yeah, like it's thanks again for First Nation Housing Conference allowing me to speak here. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'm usually there at the conference, but yeah, it's a very busy time over here, and I'm got to be in two places at once. So hopefully I'll be there next year.
Appreciate it very much, Jason. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.